Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari
Hare Om.
So, we've been doing the Isha Upanishad for quite some time, maybe a year, I don't remember how long. And we had completed up to the 16th verse. Isha Upanishad has 18 verses. We had finished up to the 16th verse. And what remains are the last two verses, the 17th and the 18th verse. Just to do a recap of the 15th and 16th verses so that we know the perspective, the reference. The 15th and 16th verses were a prayer of the Rishi to Surya. If you remember the verses, you can open your book to it. The 15th verse was Hiranmayena Patrena Satyasya Apihitam Mukham. Tattvam Pushanna Pavrinu Satya Dharmaya Drishtaye. The face of truth is covered with a brilliant golden lid. That do thou remove, O fosterer, for the law of the truth for sight. What the 15th verse is referring to is the lid on top of the overmind. If you remember, we had done all those minds and we'd done the 7 planes of consciousness. And we said that after overmind, there is a lid, a golden lid. So when anybody has reached the overmind, there's so much light of the golden lid that one feels that one has reached and there's no need to even make an effort to go beyond. So here the Rishi knows that this lid is just a golden lid, but beyond that is the Surya. Surya or the supermind, and the supermind or Surya stand for knowledge with a capital K. Now this knowledge, for it to manifest in this body, in the human, it needs a reflection of itself. And that reflection of itself is the Agni within us. So the 15th and 16th verses are addressed to Surya or knowledge or supermind and or sun. Sun is a symbol, not the real, not this sun that we see. So that sun, when it manifests in the human being, it needs a reflection of itself, and that Purnamada that is within us, that Purnamidam, that which is within us, is the Agni. And the verses 17 and 18 are addressed to Agni, so that both complete each other. And the Rishi is saying in the 15th verse, that lid, that brilliant golden lid, that do thou remove, O fosterer, O increaser. Why should you remove that lid? So that we can see the law of the truth. The law of the truth is there in the sun, that supermind, for the law of the truth for sight, so that we may be able to see that law of the truth. And the 16th verse says, Ushanne karsheyam surya prajapatya vyum rashmin samu tejo yakte rupam kalyantamam tatte pashyami yo savaso purusha sohamasmi. Yo savaso purusha sohamasmi. Yo savaso purusha sohamasmi. O fosterer, it is still being addressed to the sun, to the Surya, to the supermind, to that supreme consciousness. O fosterer, O soul seer, O ordainer, he who ordains what is to be done. O illumining sun, O power of the Father of creatures, marshal thy rays. Direct thy rays, marshal them, draw together thy light, the luster which is thy most blessed form of all. That in thee I behold. I see that luster in thee, but bring your rays together to form a full, like a pillar of light, and let just tear that golden lid and let that light come into me like a pillar of light inside me. The Purusha there and there, he am I. Yo Savaso Purusha, Soham Asmi. These were the 15th and 16th verses. Now we move forward to the 17th and 18th verses. Now the 17th and 18th verses, when explained, have a lot of footnotes as well. But before we take the footnotes, I will try and explain in whatever manner I can possibly explain from what Kirit uncle had taught to us, the 17th and 18th verses. And after that, we'll take the footnotes. Vayura anilam amritam athedam bhasmantam shariram. Om kratosmara kritam smara kratosmara kritam smara. Now remember that these two verses are addressed to Agni. Agni is the will in us, the divine will, the divine sankalpa. The breath of things is an immortal life, but of this body, ashes are the end. Ashes are the end, bhasmantam shariram. But the breath of things is an immortal life. The breath of things means the prana. Vayura anilam, amritam. The breath, the prana in us is amritam. Athaidam, bhasmantam shariram. Although this body will be reduced to ashes, the breath of things is an immortal life, but of this body, ashes are the end. Om, O will, remember. O will, remember that which was done. Remember. Om krato smara, kritam smara. O will, remember that which was done. Remember. So, even if this body, idam bhasmantam shariram, even if this body gets reduced to ashes, vayura anilam amritam, the life force, yet the life force in us, the prana, remains immortal. And then the Rishi is telling the Agni within us that Om krato smara, kritam smara, krato smara, kritam smara. Now this is a very mystic and occult advice which has been given by the Upanishad to each one of us. It's a very mystic advice. Krato is the will of Agni. Each one of us is Agni. And as we've talked earlier, even so many times, that the identification that we do with the body, with this mind, that I am this, I am Anjali, this body, and this body may die. But Anjali is actually must identify herself with that which is immortal, that which was. This Agni was, and this Agni will go into another body. So why am I identifying myself with this body? Our identification has to be with that which is immortal. So the Rishi is saying Agni is described in the Vedas as Amritam. Amritam Martyeshu, that which is immortal in the mortal. This is the mortal body. But that which is immortal in the mortal body is the Agni. And that immortal is the integral light that moves and that moves not. Remember in the 4th and 5th verses, God was described. And he was said that runs, that does not run. That moves and that does not move. That is immortal. And it has been brought down from that supreme integral consciousness, from the sun, from the supermind, from Satchidananda. Do you remember the story of creation that we had done earlier? Maybe 2 years back, maybe a year back, I don't remember. But I'll just recap a little bit that when the divine presence was there, Chitta Ghana, there was just the divine presence. There was no time. Time had not been created. God had not become time. God had not yet become space. So if there is no time and there is no space, there is obviously no possibility of creation. Because creation can come only in the limitation of time and in the limitation of space. So when there was no time and no space, when the divine was there, only the divine presence, and that divine thought that, and with that will, that sankalpa of the divine, he let out from himself Ritam cha Satyam. It is a verse, Agamarshana mantra in the Vedas. Ritam cha Satyam cha Vidat tapasodhya jayata. Tato ratri jayata tatah samudro arnava. When that divine presence, when he meditated tapaso, when he did tapas, then what came out of him? Ritam and Satyam. The truth and the right. Right and the truth. And when the right and the truth came out, the divine allowed the right and truth full freedom without keeping the control in his hands. And with that freedom, he allowed Ritam and Satyam to go and become many, do what they want. And Ritam and Satyam chose to go so far from their own source. They went far and far and far till Ritam and Satyam both became what? They became the inconscient, the darkness. That which was immortal became mortal. That which was Satya became Asatya, falsehood. That which was joy, supreme Ananda, became the opposite of Ananda. And when that darkness, when there was complete darkness, then there was a question. And the divine thought to himself, how will I awaken this darkness again? How will I awaken this darkness into light? And cutting that long story short, that the divine said, okay, I have Agni within me. And the solution was found that if Agni would be put forward into the inconscient, and it was brought from the supreme integral consciousness as innumerable sparks, and each one of us is one of those innumerable sparks. We were all brought down, and before being brought down, there was a conversation with the divine, and the divine took our permission. He said, are you ready to play the game? And we all said, yes, we are ready to play this game of hide and seek with you. And we all, Agni, all of us came down as sparks into the inconscient. The story began then. And then, because of the presence of this Purna, the divine, full divine, which is this Agni, came down into the inconscient. And from there, from the inconscient, as the Agni started baking and baking, from that inconscient came out matter. From the matter came out life, prana, vegetation, and then came out mind, the lower insects, the larger insects, and then the animals, and then the higher animals, and then the ape, and then man. The whole story we know. So, when we say we, who is it that we are referring to? We should actually be referring to the Agni. The Agni element in us is that we. Agni, which is immortal. Agni, which has been there from body after body. And it is this Agni which connects us with our past life and connects us towards the future life. So what this verse is saying, that when we die, bhasmantam shariram, when we die, what happens? This body is reduced to ashes. But what remains alive? What remains alive is the prana in us. Not only the prana, it is also the mental. The mental being also remains alive. It is only the body that dies. And with the soul carries the baggage of the life, that is prana, what they are talking to, vayura anilam, and the mind. And slowly and steadily, as they are sublimated, they are also dropped. What remains alive is the sukshma deha, and that sukshma deha carries the prana and the mind, and then they go through those various, we've already talked about it earlier, they go through the various planes of consciousness till they are also dropped and we reach the highest plane, the soul plane. Now, coming back to this verse, Agni is the word for the soul. It is immortal. It does not die. It is the Amritam in the Marteshu. It is that which is Amrita in this mortal body. Therefore, we can always go back to the soul. And this is the mark of development in a human being as well. That when you look at the soul, you can glance back at your whole life. Flashes of your life keep coming to you, can come to you. The more conscious you are, the more flashes of your life come back to you. And there are critical moments when you can look back and you can actually see your whole life at a glance. And there are other people whose consciousness has grown to such an extent, whose connectivity with the soul, with that which is Amrita within them, their identification is so great that they can even see their past lives. They can see who they were in the life before, or maybe 100 lives back. All the important, poignant lives, they can see them all. Sri Aurobindo knew many of his old lives, who he was. Kirit uncle easily could flash back and see so many of his lives, who he was. And our death, our disintegration is only because of our forgetfulness. We do not remember the agreement that we had done with God right in the very beginning. So we do not know that we ourselves are that immortal soul, that we have been put forward from birth to birth to birth, developing under the guidance of this soul itself. And even now, it is this soul which is still guiding us even when we are unconscious, even when we are unaware. And here, the Rishi is saying, oh will, if you look at the verse, the meaning, oh will is that sankalpa, the will is this Agni. Oh will, remember that which was done. Remember, Om Kratosmara, Kritam Smara. Kratosmara, Kritam Smara. All this we have forgotten. Therefore, in this verse, the Rishi is saying again and again, to that will, to that Agni, oh Agni, remember. Oh Agni, remember. Remember means remind me also. Connect me. I want to be connected to you, O soul. You who remembers. Who is that will which remembers? Kratosmara, Kritosmara, Kratosmara, Kritosmara. In very short, this is the meaning of the 17th verse. Of course, Sri Aurobindo has written so much that we will need at least 5-6 sessions to be able to understand this verse through the commentary of Sri Aurobindo. Also, he has given us 2 footnotes, which also we will go to. But right now, I would like to, in the flow, explain the 18th verse as well. And then we'll take the footnotes. I hope everybody is clear about the 17th verse. Yes? Clear? Okay. So now we go to the 18th verse.
Anjali, when they say ki, oh, will remember that which was done, is it like telling Agni that remember what you need to do now? Or like what has already been done and now you need to look at what is to be done further ahead?
Actually, there is a doubt in this. Commentators on this have written different commentaries. But basically, this is an imploration of the Vedic Rishi to the Agni within, that you remember, because you have the capacity to remember. And when you remember, and if I get connected to you, I too will remember.
Okay. So the mind is telling Agni.
Mind is telling Agni that you remember. I know that you remember. But when you bring it forward, then I too will remember. But right now I've forgotten everything. 18th verse. Agni Naya Supatharaye Asman Vishwani Dev Vayunani Vidwan Yuyodhya Smaj Juhuranam eno bhuyishtham te nama uktim vidhema. Agne, O Agni, Naya, lead Supatha by the right path. Rai is a very important word. Rai should be remembered by us. Rai means that supreme felicity, that supreme blessedness, that state of the supreme blessedness, the supreme happiness, the spiritual happiness is Rai. So, O Agni, you lead us by the right path. To what? To Rai, to felicity. Who should you lead? Asman, lead us. Vishwani Deva Vayunani Vidwan. You are Vidwan, you are the knower. And you lead all things that are manifested. Us means all things that are manifested. Vishwani Deva Vayunani. So, O Agni, you lead. And you lead us, should I do word by word? O Agni, O fire, Naya means lead. Supatha, by the right path. Rai, to felicity, to delight, to the spiritual delight. Asman, lead us. Vishwan Vayunani, all things that are manifested. Vidwani, you are the knower. Agni is supposed to be the knower of all things. In the Vedas, Agni is referred to as Jata Veda, that which knows the past, that which knows the present, and that which already knows the future. Because it has arisen right from the inconscient, right? We just talked that when there was the inconscient, Agni was placed in the inconscient, right?
No, you were telling us word to word. Naye is lead, Rai is spiritual happiness, Supatha is right path, Asman is
Asman
lead
is
us.
us. Vishwani Vayunani is all things that are manifested. Vidwani, the knower, Agni is the knower. And Agni is supposed to be the knower, the past, the present and the future. Because, why? Because Agni was placed in the inconscient. So right from then, it is by the baking of Agni. Agni is the flame of aspiration. The aspiration that to become more than we are. To get connected to the Agni, to get connected to the sun, to get connected to knowledge, to get connected to God. That aspiration actually is the flame of aspiration of Agni. Right?
Yeah.
So Agni is also called Jata Veda, which knows. And now the second line, Yuyodhi. Yuyodhi is to fight. Asmat, from us. Take away from us. What should you take away from us? Juhuranam. This attractive temptation. Temptation to what? Ena. To the sin. So you fight and you take away this Juhurani, this temptation to Ena, the sin. You are Bhuyishtam, you are the best. And te nama uktim vidhemaha. Nama uktim vidhema, we offer to you by ordered. Vidhema is ordered method. By a vidhi, in a methodical manner, according to the Shastras, in a yogic manner, we offer to you Nama Uktim. We do pranam to you and we offer to you our speech. Uktim is speech. Nama Uktim, we give you the speech of submission. The speech that we offer to you is a speech of submission. To you, to thee, completest speech of submission we offer to you. Now let us, in the light of every word's understanding, let us read the meaning. Oh God.
Just one point. This
Yes,
is Yogesh.
yes,
In the
Yogesh.
17th, the Agni is supposed to remember. And in the 18th verse, it is a knower. It knows everything. Doesn't
Yes.
this, see the whole, it seems that if we can first have Agni know and remember, and if we communicate or connect with it, we can also know. But if it is already a knower, then why does it have to remember?
That is why, I mean, it is not that it doesn't remember. Agni always remembers. But what the Rishi is saying, that you bring forward what you remember, so that the mind can also remember. Mind doesn't remember, right, Yogesh? Agni
Correct.
remembers. Agni is the knower. Agni is called Jata Veda through the Vedas. It is called Jata Veda. That which knows the past, the present and the future. Veda comes from the word Vid. Vid means to know. And the Agni is the knower. And it is actually a spark of that superminor. So how can the
Correct.
spark be very different from the fire? So it knows, but the Rishi is saying, you who is the knower, you remember it, you bring forward that knowledge so that we too may remember. Right?
That makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Anjali, can I just ask
Yeah.
you something?
Yes.
Anjali, Agni, soul, Purushotama, they all are same.
Agni and soul are the same. Purushottama is not the same. Purushottama is the highest. Uttam Purusha. Purusha Uttama is Purushottama.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Purushottama became the sun, became the Agni. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
जी विश्वानी एंड वायुनानी क्या मीनिंग था?
Vishwani Deva Vayunani, all the things that are manifested. Everything that has been manifested in the Vishwa, all of that, all of us, please take us all. Oh Agni, you lead us, Naya, you lead us. You lead us where? By the right path. And lead us to what? To Rai, to the supreme delight. Right? All the things that are manifested, all of us. O knower, O Vidwan, O Agni, O Vidwan, take all things that are manifested, Vishwani, Deva, Vayunani, all of us, Asman, you lead Naya, Supatha, by the right path, Supatha, Patha is path, Su is right, the right path, where do you lead us? To felicity, to that supreme delight, right? Right?
Thank you.
Anjali, what is Juharan?
Juhuranam.
Juhuran.
Juhuranam is the attraction.
Temptation within.
It's a
Temptation,
temptation.
yes.
Okay.
Temptation, attraction. And it's a devious attraction. It is not a good attraction. And it's attraction to what? Ena, to sin. Right? Okay?
Anjali, I've got one question. Renu this side.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the 17th verse, you said you have to identify with the Agni. You said like who are we? We should not identify ourselves as ourselves, but we have to identify with Agni. But iske pehle we were always thinking or being explained that you have to identify with your soul, which is he, with H as the capital. So then isn't this too contradictory? अगर आप already पुरुषोत्तम के संग identify कर रहे हैं, तो why should you then identify with the Agni? Or
So the soul is Agni.
okay.
The soul is symbolized as the Agni. Because
Okay.
अगर हम soul बोले तो हम what should I imagine जिसके साथ हम connect कर रहे हैं? So it is called Agni. It's not like a red hot fire.
Right.
It is a cool spark.
Yeah.
That is the Agni.
Okay.
Okay, na?
Thank you.
So now going word by word, Nama Uktim Videma, we offer by ordered method by which is a methodical vidhi from the Shastras. So Shastras give us a manner in which we should offer. हमारा submission कैसा होना चाहिए, किस method से होना चाहिए, ये शास्त्र बताते हैं. So according to the Shastra, the whole we are offering our speech of submission to you, to thee. Now we read the meaning. O God Agni, knowing all things that are manifested, lead us by the good path to the felicity. Remove from us the devious attraction of sin. Lead us by the good path to the felicity. Felicity is that intense spiritual joy, the highest joy. Remove from us the devious attraction of sin. To thee, completest speech of submission we would dispose. So there are three things in this prayer. One is that it is a prayer to Agni. And as we've understood, Agni is our inner soul. Agni is that flame within. It is also the spirit of the divine will. The divine has a will, and that will is manifested in our soul, through our soul, in the whole universe. It is Agni which has presided over the whole movement. It is Agni which is presiding over whatever movement we are doing, whether we listen to it or we don't. Therefore, Agni has the secret of all the things in the world. Now, in this prayer, there are three things. First of all, Agni is asked to lead us to the right path. Secondly, it is telling Agni, oh Agni, lead us to the right path and keep us liberated from the temptation of sin. And the third thing, Agni is asked to fight this battle, because hum akele, without submission to Agni, without getting the strength from Agni, if this mind thinks that it can alone fight this path, कि हम right और wrong, mind के पास क्या है? Mind के पास right और wrong है, morals हैं. But did Krishna make Arjun fight the battle through the moralistic right and wrong? No. He made Arjuna fight the battle through that which was the right and wrong given by the soul, by the divine himself. And that right and wrong is different from the right and wrong that the mind gives us, because the mind is brought up with a moralistic view. But Agni will take us to the right view, which is the divine's view, the divine's will, because the Agni is the divine's will. So we have to remember that the third thing is that Agni is called the warrior and is requesting, the rishi is requesting to Agni that you become the warrior and you are the leader, you are the real worker, you are the mason. You are the mason who has built, from the incontinent you built matter, from matter you built life, from life you built mind, from there you built the human being, and from there you have built all of us. So you are the builder, you are the Yuyodi. You fight and you remove this devious attraction of sin. It's a very beautiful mantra. And it's a mantra that could really help each one of us. Because all of us, all the time, are faced with this attraction to do the right or the wrong. And this Agni is a scout in the journey. But only when we invite the Agni forward, then that actually happens. This is basically the meaning of these two verses.
You mentioned that the spark, Agni, is a scout. And as you explained, verse 17 and 18, the scout knows the goal. It knows the best or the most auspicious path to reach that goal. And
Yes.
it also knows, so the scout actually knows the destination. It knows the shortest or the most auspicious path. And it also knows how to keep away from attraction, distraction, and reach that goal in the shortest possible way.
Absolutely.
So the Agni knows it, and it knows
Yes.
everything. So the disconnect seems to be that we are not connected to Agni.
Absolutely.
So if we could connect to Agni, then it is like, we are lost in a forest. You got a guy who the destination team has sent to you. All you have to do is hold his hand, and it will take you through the shortest path, avoid all the tigers, the animals, and take you into the destination home in the middle of the forest.
Absolutely.
That seems to be. So I was saying, so where this seems to be, what it is implying is that there is wisdom in the spark. It knows the shortest way. It knows how to avoid distractions. It knows it all, right?
Yes.
It is just that because we are not connected to this wisdom of, or the essence of everything correct. It is just because we are disconnected, we don't seem to be ever achieving the goal. So the 17th and 18th seems to be implying that the more you get connected to this scout, to the spark, the more clarity will come, because the scout then opens the path. It's like the path to be taken to the goal also seems to be being opened by the scout. But
Absolutely.
because we are not connected or holding hands with the scout, we don't seem to know all of this. Is that what it is?
Yes, it is that. Very clearly said, very, very clearly said. Thank you.
Anjali, may I say something?
Yes.
Now, up till now, you've always told us to surrender before doing anything. How mundane the job may be, we must surrender to the Krishna, to the Almighty, or whosoever we. So here now you are also saying that we should surrender to the Agni. So what is the difference?
It is the same
It is
thing.
the same thing.
It's the same thing. You can, It's
Okay.
always easiest to offer to the soul within because it is so close to you.
So Agni is soul,
Agni is
Krishna,
soul.
everything is same.
And
you
for
know.
some people, Krishna is sitting right here. For
Hmm.
somebody, Guru Nanak may be sitting here. For some people, it is the soul itself as a fire. It depends on what you
So
want
basically, it's
to
the aspiration whom you ever relate to, whatever you relate
Yes.
to.
So in our home, you have a look. There is somewhere from where the light is coming, right? There is from the government's electricity department, electricity is being sent. And where is it coming? To your home's transformer. And from the transformer, it comes to your bulb and your fan and your air condition, right? Similarly, the divine, the sun, the Satchidananda is sending all of himself into the transformer which is inside us. And from here, the electricity ka sanchar ho raha hai into this body. Everything is working because the electricity is coming from this transformer. So we can either connect with this transformer or we can connect with the real source, Purushottama. Choice is ours. People find it easier to connect here because this is so close, right? But the choice is ours. All right?
Thank you.
Now let us do the footnotes. The breath of things is an immortal life. Now this breath of things has been explained by Sri Aurobindo in the footnote. Let's read the footnotes. Is everybody ready? Vayu, called elsewhere Matarishwan. We had done Matarishwan in verses 4 or 5 somewhere there in detail, but we'll do it again. Vayu, called elsewhere Matarishwan, the life energy in the universe. So Vayu or Matarishwan is the prana. It is the life energy. When we talk of matter, life or vital and mental. Everybody remembers the Trayovasya Pada, the 3 feet, and then the Chatushringa. So the 3 feet, there is matter, prana or life, and the mind. So Vayur Anilam, Vayu or Matarishwan or prana is the life energy or the driving force which is responsible for all movement, all motion, all life energy in the universe and inside us. In the light of Surya, he reveals himself as an immortal principle of existence, of which birth and death and life in the body are only particular and external processes. So, when we get the illumination which is granted by Surya, by knowledge, by supermind, it is because of the illumination that Surya is giving to us that we come to know that Vayu or Matarishwan is an immortal or an imperishable principle of existence. And Vayu is actually a fundamental feature of the cosmos. Vayu is again not the air, but the air principle inside each one of us, which actually carries life, which instills life, which is life. And this birth, death, and life again, and then birth, and then death, these are just continuous processes. Iqbal had said something very beautiful. He had said that day and night, and then again the day, again night, these are eternal. They just keep happening one after the other. They are recurring events. But in actual reality, it is the continuous flow of the stream of time. Similarly, we have to understand that death and birth, what Sri Aurobindo is saying, death and life in the body are only particular processes. We give too much importance to birth and to death. I will die, or so and so has died. But that eternity has not died. The eternity is flowing. In that Birth has taken place, death takes place, birth takes place, death takes place. If we are able to see life and death in that light, that's what Sri Aurobindo is explaining here. The second footnote is the breath of things is an immortal life. Is this clear, everybody? But of the body, ashes are the end. Oh will, remember that which was done. So, oh will, now we are talking about Om Krato. Krato. Will has a word in Sanskrit, which is Krato. The Vedic term Krato means sometimes the action itself and sometimes the effective power behind the action, represented in mental consciousness by the will. The Vedic term Kratu actually has two connotations. Sometimes it is to be understood as the action that has taken place, the action that has been performed or will be performed. And sometimes the consciousness or the motive force behind the action. Don't we say it is not the action that matters? What happened? Yeah, what happened? Is everybody there?
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody was saying something. Okay. So, the Vedic
So Anjali, what is Anilam?
They're both Vayu. They're
Together
both
one.
the prana.
Acha, okay, they're one word, life force. Okay.
Yeah, life force.
Vayu or Anil. Anil doesn't mean Ag, Agni. Anil is Agni.
Anil is Agni.
Yeah.
Vayu is
Is
the prana.
Prana,
So
yeah.
this is, the prana force and the breadth of things is being talked about, and which we've already understood that is a continuous flow in which birth and death and all these things keep happening. Like in an ocean, the bubble happens, a small wave happens, goes, comes again, goes, comes again, goes. So birth and death are just events that happen in the continuous flow of time, right? And similarly, the breath of life is a continuous thing in which this birth and death keep happening, right?
So this is the pranamay kosh, and which is also the sukshma sharir.
Yes, absolutely. Very good, Poonam. So now we come back to the 12th footnote. We have said that the Vedic term kratu has two connotations. First is the action itself that was done or is being done or will be done. And the second connotation of kratu, the intention behind the act, that is also part of kratu, right? Don't we say sometimes कि क्या किया वो जरूरी नहीं है, but intention क्या था वो ज़्यादा जरूरी है. So this is what he's trying to say, that the Vedic term kratu means sometimes the action itself, sometimes the effective power behind the action, which is represented in mental consciousness by the will. Even in the Gita, the whole philosophy of Karma Yoga is that an action in itself is not what really matters, but the state of consciousness in which one is when that action is being performed. Right? In Life Divine, Sri Aurobindo defines will as will is consciousness applying itself to achieve a work. Will is consciousness applying itself to achieve a result. So we'll move forward. Agni is this power. So that Kratu is Agni. Agni is this power. He is divine force which manifests first in matter as heat and light and material energy, and then taking different forms in the other principles of man's consciousness, leads him by a progressive manifestation upwards to the truth and the bliss. This is quite clear, but we'll still understand it further. Agni is the power which is represented in the mental consciousness as will, sankalpa. What is will in the mental consciousness? Gets its driving force from Agni, or the inhabitor, or the antaratman, or the soul. So when we say कि उसका will power बहुत strong है, where does he get that driving force? Where does he get that willpower from? That willpower is a connectivity that the mind has with the soul. And that soul power is actually manifested as willpower in the mind. It is the soul's will, the soul sankalpa. And Agni is the dynamic Shakti, the divine dynamic Shakti of the soul, which is responsible. In the beginning, what is it responsible for? Heat, light, and material energy. Where does Vayu get its energy from? Where does the prana get its energy from? That also gets from Agni only, right? And then Agni first manifests itself as heat and light and material energy. And then Agni also brings into existence its other manifestations. First heat and light, and then the vital principle, prana, and the mental principle, manomaya, and gradually it leads him forward. Finally, first heat and light, then the prana, then the mana, and from there it leads it towards a final destination of truth and ananda. This is what Agni can lead us to. Agni has led us to the development of the mind. Agni has led us to the understanding that there is something beyond this material universe that we are running helter-skelter for. And now this Agni has the capacity to lead us towards that supreme Ananda or Rai, what was given to us, a beautiful term that we must remember. So this was the 12th footnote of the first verse. Now we come to the second verse. O God Agni, knowing all things that are manifested, lead us by the good path to the felicity. Remove from us the devious attraction of sin. Now sin has a footnote. Sri Aurobindo is so meticulous. Everything has been brought to its minutest description. So nothing escapes us. Sin, in the conception of the Veda, from which this verse has been taken bodily. This verse actually figures in the Vedas directly as it is. Sin, in the conception of the Veda, from which this verse is taken bodily, is that which excites and hurries the faculties into deviation from the good path. Do you remember what we had called, what Sanskrit calls sin?
Duritani.
Yes.
Duritani.
Duritani, that which takes us dur, which takes us away from the right path. Sin, according to the Vedas, from which this verse has been taken out verbatim, is that which causes a deviation from the ritasya pantha, from the right path, from the rijusya pantha, riju pantha. What is the riju pantha? That which is a straight path, straight towards the divine. From the ritasya pantha, from the riju pantha, sin is that which takes us, deviates us from the right path and from the straight path. And how does sin do it? By exciting us, by hurrying our faculties. Our faculties, how they get so excited. Sri Aurobindo says further, there is a straight road, or road of naturally increasing light and truth. Rijuva pantha. Riju is straight. Ritasya pantha, the right path, leading over infinite levels and towards infinite vistas, with a prastha, by which the law of our nature should normally take us towards our fulfillment. Now look at the word here, by which the law of our nature. What is this law of our nature referring to from the Gita? Somebody tell me. Law of our nature is referring to what we studied in the Gita.
Swadharma.
Swabhava and Swadharma. Swabhava. What is my unique Swabhava is different from your unique Swabhava. And that is the law of my nature. And when I follow my Swabhava, I am led to the Swadharma. So the right path, or Ritasya Pantha, is the path that leads to an increase in light and truth. And Riju Pantha means that which is the straight path, to that supreme felicity. Ritasya Pantaha is the path of truth. The straight path and the path of truth will spontaneously lead us to a direct ascent of consciousness. We will keep ascending in our consciousness if we follow the Ritasya Pantaha, the Rijuhu Pantaha, and we will pierce through several levels. Several levels we will pierce through. It will be because the straight path is a straight path. It is not that devious path. Remember that picture that we always see when we go to Auroville, the mother's drawing. See, when you're ascending a mountain, so when you're at the lower level of the mountain, the horizon is right there. As you ascend, the horizon becomes further and you're able to see a wider view. And similarly, when you ascend higher, you see a wider view. What is this widening? This widening, when we go through the straight path, the higher we ascend, the wider becomes our view. What is wideness in consciousness? What does wideness in consciousness mean? When we are at the lower level, it is about me and mine. Meri family, mere ko kya mila? What can I get? What have I not got? What more can I collect? As you start widening, as you start going on the straight path and you ascend, your consciousness starts becoming wider and wider and wider. What is called in Sanskrit, brihad, becomes larger. That is why these three words are very important. Satyam, Ritam, Brihad. Satyam is the truth, Ritam is the right, and Brihad is the vast. As we ascend on the right path, we will naturally be taken towards the highest spiritual consummation. Now I'm reading from the book. Sin compels it instead to travel with stumblings amid uneven and limited tracks and along crooked windings, Duritani, Vrijinani. When we follow the path of sin, when we follow the path of narrowness, me, mine, only for me, when we follow that path, we become constricted. When we become constricted, the path becomes crooked and winding. It is not a straight path. Instead of letting it go straight, the consciousness goes straight, sin instead forces the path to become a very winding path full of stumblings amid difficult and crooked roads, regions which are often distractions. Duritani, and they are circumambulatory. They go round and round. Instead of following the straight path, they go round and round that path. Kar lenge, abhi to let me get what I want. Duritani is actually a synonym for sin, as we've said before. It means that which takes away from the divine path, the direct path. But the beauty of the Vedas and the Vedic rishis is that they never hated the sinner. They never looked down on the sinner. They never punished the sinner, never. What they did was pray for the sinner, or at the most, which is pity the sinner. That sinner who cannot be changed by prayer, they would feel bad for him. Because what is he doing? What he will collect in this life will be left here. Bhasmantam shariram. And what one would have lost is that ascent to higher and higher levels of consciousness, which would actually go with that person through to the next life. So the Vedic seers had a very wide outlook, and they would never censure, they would never criticize the sinner. In the Semitic view, unfortunately, sin attracts punishment. And that we've all heard in Bible, unfortunately in the Quran as well. There is punishment for the sinner. But in the Vedic view, the view is of helping the deviant, the one who is deviating. We help the deviant to come back to the right path. Knowledge is virtue, right? So this is so far as what they've written for sin. To thee, completest speech of submission, we would dispose. Now this word vidhema is very important, and vidhema has also a footnote for itself. And it's a long footnote, but we shall do it. Yeah. The word vidhema is used of the ordering of the sacrifice, the disposal of the offerings to the god, and generally of the sacrifice of or worship itself. So the word vidhema has actually, in this one line, it says it has three connotations. The first is vidhema is to prepare the ritual. And then prepare it means to commission the yajna. Second is putting the oblations in the fire of yajna. And third is the whole act of offering. So the Vedic understood now that the word vidhema is used of the ordering of the sacrifice. First, that हमने एक decision लिया that I want to do yajna. Even when I'm having a glass of water and I say I want to offer this glass of water to you. You are this water. You are the energy which is going to drink it, and you are the one who will drink it. So that ordering the sacrifice also is explained by vidhema. Then the disposal of the offerings. Then I say I offer this glass of water to you. So vidhema also explains the actual offering and generally of this sacrifice or worship itself. So finally, the worship itself is explained by vidhema. The Vedic namas, internal and external obeisance, is a symbol of submission to the divine being in ourselves and in the world. See, in this there was nama uktim videma. If you look at the 18th verse, the last two words are nama. Nama uktim videma. So this namas, Sri Aurobindo is saying, this namas cannot be only कि मैंने प्रणाम किया पानी को. It has to be an internal namas and an external obeisance. When I do pranam to the water that I am going to drink, or pranam an invitation to the divine that you speak or you hear when this session will happen. So that is an external, but there has also to be an internal namas. There has to be an internal pranam, an internal surrender, an internal submission to the divine being in ourselves and also the divine being in the world. There has to be both subjective and objective surrender. The word namas in the Vedas actually means total surrender. Namas. It's like I'm flat on the floor with my hands and sashtang. Complete surrender. Then we use the word namas. And this has to be both, as I explained just now, it has to be both internal and it has to be external to the divine being. The divine being who's present inside me and the divine being who's present in the world. And in order for this surrender to be total, the surrender has to be both subjective and it has to be objective. Now, let us try and understand.
The three aspects that you mentioned,
Yes.
One is the intent, second is the act itself. The three connotations you said, one is the intent, so one is the procedure of doing the sacrifice, second is the act of the sacrifice, and the third, what was the third?
Third is the whole act of the whole thing
if you
together. The third is the whole act itself. First is that I'm preparing the ritual. I'm thinking that when I will give the session, so I'm thinking there's an intent in me that before the session, I must remember and I must invite Kirit uncle into it. So I'm thinking that I will do this, right? It's like I'm commissioning the yajna. The second is actually doing it. I'm saying, Kirit uncle, please come in the session. I don't know even one word. I don't know what I'm going to speak. And the third is all of it together. The whole act together.
So Gita chapter 4 verse 24 Brahma
Wow.
Ahutam, Brahma Havi, Brahma Brahma Ahutam, Brahme
Yes.
Vaten Gantavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhina.
Beautiful. How well. I mean, phenomenal, yeah. How you pulled it out instantly.
Yeah, because something people say you should always do it even before eating.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
Of course, must. Because then you will turn the food into prasada,
prasada.
right? But many people do it only before eating and
Yes.
they forget to do it while they are fighting.
Yeah, that is.
And they forget to do it when they are in pain, when they are in grief. But that is the time the surrender really helps. Because there is a lot of pain and difficulty in life, and especially for sadhaks. The pain is unbelievable. There is a lot of pain, lot of difficulty. And the more we ascend in the sadhana, the more difficulties come our way. Because the sadhana is not an easy sadhana, right? It is not a sadhana where we are just dancing and feeling very happy. There is a sadhana of transformation. This is a sadhana of turning our nature around. And that is the intent that we had taken. That is our intent with which we surrender to the divine. And we said, I want to change my nature. What had we said for nature?
Swabhava. Swabhava.
Nature.
Madhbhavam agata.
Madhbhava.
If I want to become his natured, can you imagine how much reinventing and recalibrating of our whole being has to be done? And for that, can it be done only through singing and dancing? No. We have to become conscious of ourselves. And sometimes when we're not conscious, God comes and takes away something from us. And then that pain of that going away from us, of that which we are holding, like, iske bina to main nahi reh sakti hu. And then to be able to, in the mode of surrender, to be able to accept that which has been taken away, and to be able to take it as a prasada, that is the real yoga that we are doing. Our yoga is not the normal, ordinary yoga कि कुछ सवेरे हनुमान चालीसा पढ़ ली, शाम को कुछ मंत्र कर लिया, आंख बंद करी और सो गए. It is a continuous yoga. Sri Aurobindo says all life is yoga. Every moment is yoga. And that is the yoga of Sri Aurobindo, of a complete transformation of our being. It is not a mean task. It is not a simple task. Coming back to the point, what is subjective surrender? Subjective surrender means surrendering our own beliefs. When we don't surrender our beliefs, we will have people in our life who will make us change our belief. We will not change the belief, but we will not enforce it on others. So surrendering means surrendering our beliefs, our preferences, our desires, our convictions, our sanskaras even, which have been implanted in us since childhood. Tell me how many sanskaras of Arjun he had to surrender in the battle of Kurukshetra. How many times? Even a person like Yudhishthir had to leave that sanskara. I am on the path of dharma. He was made to tell Guru Drona ki yes, Ashwatthama has been killed. Although still he stuck to his dharma and he said very softly that it was an elephant. But Guru Drona couldn't hear it. He said it under his breath. But was that dharma according to him? It was not. But he had to even leave his own preference, his own desire, his own conviction, his own sanskaras. Now, what is objective surrender? Objective surrender means a glad acceptance of all that is happening in our lives. The way the world is running, it is running. Now, we can either complain or we can say this is a prasada. And to accept it as a prasada, that is an objective surrender. And namas, the word namas, it envelopes both the subjective surrender and the objective surrender. Right? Is that clear? Then we can go ahead. Here, the offering. Now is coming to the word vidhema. Here, the offering is that of completest submission and the self-surrender of all the faculties of the lower egoistic human nature to whom? To the divine will force. Which is that will force? Agni. Because this was a question of GT, who should we surrender to? Purushottama or Agni? Agni is easier to surrender to. Here the offering is that of completest submission and the self-surrender of all the faculties of the lower egoistic human nature to the divine will force Agni, so that, free from internal opposition, it may lead the soul of many through the truth towards a felicity full of the spiritual riches. Right? So beautifully said. And he doesn't say it will lead. He says it may lead. And then what does he say? He doesn't say it may lead the soul of all. He says it may lead the soul of many through the truth towards a felicity full of the spiritual riches. Right. See, a total surrender implies a surrender of all one's faculties, which we tend to take credit for because of the working of the ego. Jara sa kuch hota hai, instantly the mind grabs on the opportunity to say, I have done it. That was my idea, That which was done, I told that person. Even for something like WhatsApps, if somebody takes the credit, I had sent it to that group. This I, it has to be slowly and steadily. मूसल में डाल के उखल के साथ में उखल में डाल के मूसल से उसको क्रश करना होगा या उसे ब्यूटिफाई करना होगा, उसे वाइडन करना होगा. By the submission of our faculties, which includes ego, we free ourselves from all the internal conflicts. And the freedom thus attained, soul, man's soul, from truth to the rich ananda, that which we are talking of, Rai, the rich ananda of the spiritual consciousness. What is Rai? It is the rich ananda of spiritual consciousness. And that will happen only when we are able to submit our faculties, our senses, our internal subjective desires and preferences, and our objective desires and preferences, to be able to accept everything that comes to us in the outside world as a prasada. Then we will reach that spirit, ananda of the spiritual consciousness. Right. That state of beatitude. Beatitude means supreme blessedness. When we have reached Rai, that state of beatitude is the intended self-content in the principle of love and joy. These are two very important words. Love and joy, which the Vedic initiates regarded as the source of the divine existence in the universe and the foundation of the divine life in the human being. If the divine life is what our goal is, that towards which we are trying to traverse, that I want to live a life divine, then what is most important, these are these two words, love and joy. So starting with this statement, beatitude. Beatitude means a very high level of joy. Supreme level of joy, like felicity. Shelley in his poem Skylark had stated that the highest level of beatitude or joy is achievable only when the soul is absolutely free from the downward pull of the physical matter. Can you imagine what a beautiful thing for Shelley to have said in Skylark? He said that if somebody wants to experience beatitude, if somebody wants to experience that ananda, that spiritual ananda, then what is most important is that he has to become free from what? From the downward pull. Downward pull of this mind with its preferences and desires, downward pull of the being which and its preferences and desires, and the downward pull of this physical body which has bad health as part of its programming, and we have to work on making this body more and more and more and more perfect and in good health. All these are pulling us down, while we need to fly towards beatitude. And that
So
state of, yes, please go ahead.
yeah. So I think the one thing of the segment that you've just explained is very important, because offering is something that you've always said that I think for all of us in the Quest family, offering anything and everything to the fire within is something you've ingrained in us, right? Now, what you've explained today is that Vedihi, there is a right way of doing this offering. And you've explained the technicalities, but if you could just make it simpler and give some practical. So there are three aspects to this offering that the theory is being explained right now in the last 15 minutes. If you could just give an illustration saying, here is an action of offering, and these are the three aspects that we've explained in theory, and this is what we are doing. Any action of life, if you could just give one illustration, it would make it very clear.
Okay, so now suppose the home in which one is living, that has
You started by giving an example of this preparation you're doing for us for presenting what you did today. And you gave that illustration. If you could just elaborate that and show the three aspects, I think that would clarify.
So when you say the three aspects, which are the three aspects you are pointing
so the offering,
towards?
so if you see, it says Vedihi, right? There is a right way of doing the offering. And there are three aspects. And you explained the three aspects. You said one is from the intent itself.
Yes.
So the first was the intent. The second you explained was the action of the actual act of explanation of what's going on right now.
Yeah.
And the third was the totality you explained, right?
Yes.
So you said that whenever I do offering, these three things are the right way. If you take these into consideration, see what we are doing simply is that because of all the explanation that you've given us, thanks to being part of Quest, any action we do, we try to bring the remembrance of the fire within. But what you've explained today is that just bringing it in also, there is a right way of doing it. It's not just, dekhiye Bhagwan, main to aapko hi de raha hu, right? But there's more to it. And that is what you've explained. So if you could just elaborate a bit more on this more of the three aspects of this.
I'll elaborate to a certain extent. And let us keep this as a point. Mona ma'am will always remember to remind that now we are towards the end of the Isha Upanishad. This is a very beautiful point you brought out. And let me study it more and more and more in detail from Sri Aurobindo and from the mother, and then come out with it. What all have they said about offering? But when you say that I should explain to you by way of this example that I had already given, so let me elaborate on that example. There was a time when around at least 3 months back, I was studying the Isha Upanishad from where we are reading today. So when I was reading the Isha Upanishad, even then, it was like a full surrender. God, it is very difficult. Every line that Sri Aurobindo writes is very difficult. So I offer to you this intention to understand it, because it's not so easy. Sometimes it just flies past you, or you swim through it and you've read maybe 5 sentences, you've not understood a single word. So at every moment that offering, that surrender to the divine, oh divine, let me understand it. Please help me to understand what I should be able to understand at my level. And that offering continued. Then the notes came. The notes were being written. They were being typed. They were being corrected and then recorrected and recorrected. Every time I'd feel I'd like to add some more to it. And then finally the day came that I had to take the session. And always at the beginning, one feels completely incompetent, to be very honest. Completely incompetent. And then comes the intent that divine, Sri Aurobindo, Mother, Kirit Uncle, I don't want to speak. I bring my intention forward to you that I want this brain to be so silent that you just pour yourself through me and use me as your instrument. That is the intent with which the morning starts. And finally, when we sit down here to actually take the session, again, it is an intent. And that intent actually comes forward as a more concrete offering and trying to make the mind as silent as possible, that there is no other thought besides that it is empty. And please just pour yourself through it. So this is all that I can say at this present moment. But it's a very beautiful question, Yogesh. And it would help all of us in our journey, because all of us understand that offering is the key word to move forward. Because life gives us so many difficulties. And each of the difficulties has to be faced with that feeling of, with that submission, with that offering. Krishna, I offer this difficulty to you. I offer this joy to you. So many joys. But do we have a right over the joys? No. Tena tyaktena bhunjita, the first verse of the Isha. Isha vasya midagvam sarvam. The divine owns the divine. This whole thing has been made for him to reside in. Isha vasya midagvam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat. In all the concentric circles, me, my family, till the expanding galaxies, all of it is his. To be able to remember that all the time, we have to be in the state of offering all the time. Right?
Anjali,
Yes.
doesn't this thing again boils back to the same thing, saying surrender each and every moment? Like, for instance, just now you explained the idea that you thought of doing so and so sessions at that time, surrendering at that time, and while you were making notes, surrendering at that time, while you started the session, while surrendering at that time. Doesn't this boil down to one sentence, as you've already always explained? Surrender each and every moment of your life.
Yes,
each and every,
absolutely.
whatever you do. I think it boils down to the same thing.
It boils down to that, GT, but the more we talk about it,
Yeah.
the more we realize that we are not actually doing it all the time. To remember
that
to
I
do
agree.
it.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
so that is why these discussions are very helpful.
They keep you aligned, all the
Yes,
time.
yes, yes. I don't know if I've answered Yogesh enough or properly.
No, I think it's very clear. The two, at least I can share what I've understood. See, offering is the way forward. I mean, if we need to reach him, what you've explained so beautifully today is that the fire within, the flame within, it by default is attracted towards truth. It by default is attracted towards Ananda. Now, all we have to do is offer every aspect, everything to this beautiful flame within. And this is something that we are all, this you've ingrained thanks to being part of the Quest family. But what you explained today was that there is a right way, Vedehi. There is a way of doing this offering. It's not, sure, the elementary thing for people who are not studying the Isha, it could be just bringing the thought in. But there is a right way of bringing. One is from the intent itself, from the intent that it is you, my Lord, for any action and to make that offering. Then second is the action itself. As you said, like while I was preparing, it was always remembering Kirit uncle. While doing this activity also, it's having them saying that it's the delivery is also you. So the intent is also you, the delivery is also you. These two aspects I understood. I didn't get the third one. The third facet, somehow it's not clear to me. But as you said, maybe it's work in progress.
It's work in progress, and let me also study this even more in detail after we finish the 18th verse. And let us make that the next topic. I had thought that the next topic would be some work that I start doing on the sonnets is going to be very easy. So either we'll do the sonnets, but we will interspace it, and we will study and we will discuss offering in the light of Shiva.
Yes.
ठीक है ना?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Even I need some guidance on this.
Okay, what is it?
I said even I need some guidance on this because this is not very clear to me too.
Okay, so we will study the vidhema, the methodology of offering. But let me first
Exactly.
put in some bit of study in it. So I'm not answering just essay. It come from the source, from Sri Aurobindo and from the mother. Let me pull out something
Thank you so
with it and let me study. It's good for me. It's so good for me. Yeah.
Anjali, can I
Yeah.
ask something?
Yes,
So,
Poonam.
yeah, so in like Arjun himself heard the entire Bhagavad Gita from Bhagwan himself,
Yeah.
and he saw the Virat Roop also.
Yes.
But when Abhimanyu died, he lamented so much. So that means offering the suffering or transcending suffering must have been such a difficult task. Like it's not like you said. How do we convert it into a yoga?
So Sri Aurobindo has spoken on grief very briefly. But one thing that he says is that grief must be given its due. You cannot bypass grief. So what Arjun did was he grieved, but only for that evening. You see him the next day when he's fighting. He's fighting with 3 times or 4 times the vigor. So the grief did what it had to do to him, but that lamenting and that crying, that vishad that came to him, that was due to that incident. That incident demanded that much grief. It was his most able son. It was his son, able or not. Right? So Sri Aurobindo says you must give grief its due, but do not prolong it. Prolonged grief will lead to the incursion of the negative forces inside you. When we cry too much, we lament too much, we sit down and criticize people, what do? We instantly make a chasm in our consciousness, in our ozone layer, the layer that presents. And from there, the negative forces start entering us. So Sri Aurobindo said, give grief its due, but do not prolong it. And Arjun did exactly that. He grieved over the son that evening. And then the next day, he was full of twice or thrice the amount of vigor to get back at the Kauravas, which was anyway what he was supposed to do. It's not that he was doing it only out of revenge. He was anyway supposed to slaughter the Kauravas. That was part of his dharma. Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But grief cannot be bypassed. कि हम saint बन गए तो कुछ भी हुआ, nothing. It's okay. Grief आई to give it and let it pass. There are people who don't grieve at all. That is also very good. Okay. But
Anjali, can I say something?
Yes, Sarita.
हाँ बाद में आना अंजलि you have said these 3 for the vidhema. The 3 things that you have said, one is to prepare the ritual, the intent, and the second is the act, putting the oblation in the fire. Now the third thing what Yogesh is asking and what I'm understanding from you is the third one is the namas part, the nama uktam, because that is explaining how to do the whole act of offering. Is how to do the whole act of offering is by doing a subjective and objective surrender.
Beautifully explained, Sarita. You've
Because
done a great favor and you've explained that there is a third part, but the third part is namas.
Yeah, the namas.
Yeah, it is a surrender which is with full prostration, with the heart. With the heart in a complete prostration to the divine.
Yeah.
Very,
So that is
very.
the third part. That is the third part, what Yogesh is asking. Because even if you see this namas by itself has so much within it. You know, it's not an easy thing to do because you have to leave your beliefs, your preferences, your desires, your sanskar. I mean, that itself is going to take lifetimes to be able to, you know, do these much, and then upar se for objective surrender bhi karo. I mean, it's a lot of work. It's not
It's a
easy.
lot of work. It's a lot.
Lot
The
of work.
people on this path, the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo, the yoga of transformation, for them the path is a tough path, but it is a chosen path, and it will lead to felicity.
Yeah.
It will
So
lead. So I understand that the third part
yeah.
we can easily say, because the words that have been chosen by the Vedic Rishi are Nama Uktim Videma.
Yeah. Nama
Nama
Uktim
Uktim
Videma.
Videma.
Yeah.
So it is
So,
with the namas.
Nama. Yeah. With the namas.
With the complete surrender
Yes.
and oblation and a prostration to the divine. And then now see what we are adding to it. It's a very beautiful thing that we are adding to it. When should we come back to this line? That state of beatitude, I'm reading this again because we've lost the thread. That state of beatitude is the intended self-content in the principle of pure love and joy, which the Vedic initiates regarded as the source of the divine existence in the universe and the foundation of the divine life in the human being. So what was the foundation of the divine life? If I want to grow from an ordinary life to a divine life, what is the foundation? The Vedic initiates found that the principle of pure love and joy, these are the basics which can lead us towards that beatitude, right? And that can be possible only when we are free from our downward pull. Now that state of supreme joy, which is the goal, is pre-existent in these two principles of unmixed pure love and enjoy. So which was known to those who were familiar with the Vedic lore. They knew about it. Divine love and joy were also understood as the raison d'etre, the reason for the existence. If there were not Ananda, we would not be existing. Everything has for its base Ananda. It may not seem to us true when we face griefs in life, but even inside that grief, there is a spark of Ananda. There is that spark of Ananda never leaves. Anmol has sent us some most beautiful statements of Sri Aurobindo on Ananda. And I will try and find them again and post them. Because the very basis of divine life is this divine Ananda and love.
Elaborate on this third point you explained your own journey for doing this session with us. The first two you explained. Now that you've understood the third concept, could you elaborate of the joy? So is it being one with him and identifying with the Lord and enjoying the ananda of what he's created, the magic he's doing here right now? Is that what it is?
So the one supreme, in order to undergo the experience of Ananda through love, so that divine initiated this whole process of manifestation. And what did he use? You need ingredients, right, to manifest something. The ingredients that he used were Ananda and were love. These were his ingredients. And these were the very foundation, and they were also his goal. जो उनका foundation था manifestation का, I'll tell you now. The divine, we'll go through the process of creation again and try and find where does this Ananda come in. Okay. We had said this in the beginning, Yogesh had not entered then, that there was only the divine in the beginning before creation. There was only him, his presence, and he was doing tapas on himself. Ritam cha satyam cha bhidat tapasodhya jayata. So he was doing tapas on his own presence. And from this tapas, there was some kind of a heating, there was an expansion, there was an intent of his that I want to become Bahusyam, I want to become many. And then out of him came Rita and Satya. Ritam cha Satyam. He gave freedom to Ritam and Satyam to become what they wanted to become. And he gave full freedom. And Ritam and Satyam went far from what their source was, the divine, and they became the inconscient. Not even matter was there. Now the inconscient, where there was complete darkness, no matter, just inconscient. When the divine saw that, he said, how will that Bahusyam, my dream of Bahusyam, where I'm able to actually experience Ananda through this manifestation, how will I get that Ananda? How will I experience that love manifesting itself in this inconscient? And then he found within himself, he found Ananda. He found love. And that was the mother principle, the Shakti principle, the principle of Agni that he found within himself. And then he said to that mother principle, that principle of love and Ananda, he said, you become sparks and you go and impregnate the inconscient. Enter into the inconscient, impregnate it with Ananda and joy. And that Ananda and joy, as sparks of Agni, impregnated the inconscient. And from there, the heating of the Agni, the baking, slow baking process, very slow. This process cannot be roti banai or pakadi. It is a very gradual process. With the help of this Agni, which is Ananda, which is love, that it started helping the inconscient to become matter. So the very foundation of this existence is Ananda. The very foundation of this existence is love. And when we become that Ananda and we become that love, then we start manifesting Ananda and love through ourselves. Then we start evolving this matter, which is so full of the other side, starts becoming divine. And then we bring the divine life in this matter, in this vital being, in this mental being. And slowly and gradually, we reach the supreme divine consciousness. And we can say that Vayam Amritasya Putraha. I am the child of the immortal. I am the immortal. I am this Agni within. I identify with this Agni within. And I invite this Agni into my matter. I invite this Agni into my life, into my vital being. I invite this Agni into my mental being, so that this Ananda and joy, Ananda and love of Agni actually starts manifesting itself through my physical being, through my vital being. What manifests is only and only Ananda and love. That is the whole purpose of this creation.
Beautiful. I think it truly explains it. And I was just thinking, as you explained your preparation, the real fact is that I can say for myself and the Quest family, we really feel your love and there's always a joy. We really miss your sessions. So this is true actually, with your preparation and your hard work and effort, there's a lot of love that you feel for the whole Quest family and there's a lot of joy we all get out of it. So we can feel it as a community. So it actually is the third dimension. You're right. It explains it very well.
Thank you
Very
so much.
well said, Yogesh. Very well said.
You are my family,
Mm.
You are my very, very close family. And I miss you guys so much when these sessions don't happen. So we are blessed to have each other. So the One Supreme, in order to undergo the experience of Ananda through love, he initiated this whole process in this manner. And this is the process that we have to consciously take part in. We have to take part in this process. We have to invite the divine and invite his love, invite his Ananda again and again through everything we do. And whenever we deviate from this Ananda, from this love, When we feel critical towards some incident or some human being, we have to again just bring ourselves back, turn ourselves around. See, what is the purpose of my life? The purpose of my life is not to change somebody else or change the event, but to take this event as a prasada and take the other person as a prasada. But from me, what will flow for that other person or for the event will always be only Ananda and love. And we will go on doing that. And we do not have to subscribe all the time to only the laws that this society has made for us. They are not so important. They are important for bringing us to the point of sattva. And after that, we have to go beyond that. But right now, we have to first reach sattva. Now I come to the last sentence of this footnote. It is the deformation of this principle. Deformation of which principle? Of Ananda and love. It is the deformation of this principle by egoism, which appears as desire and the lust of possession in the lower worlds. The whole problem of life is desire and ego. The whole problem of life rests on these two thorns, desire and ego. And they are all problems of the lower worlds. Till we are, हमारी खूंटी जब तक lower world के साथ में बंधी हुई है, जैसे गाय खूंटी के अराउंड बांध देते हैं ना, जब तक हमने अपना धागा, अपना चेन lower worlds की खूंटी में बांध रखा है, तब तक we will go on desiring and go on criticizing and go on being dissatisfied with this world. And it is not going to help us. And it is because of the intervention of egoism that these divine principles of love and joy, love and ananda, they get distorted. And they are still getting distorted. And they then start becoming desire and the lust for possession and the lust for power, ego, whatever you may call it. Sri Aurobindo, in his Thoughts and Aphorisms, says that the Rakshasa, he knows Kama, but he does not know Prema. The Rakshasa knows Kama. Kama is lust, but he does not know Prema. In Kama, there is an urge to possess, and in Prem, there is an urge to give. So we can see in ourselves, we have to use every statement that we learn not to judge another person, but to judge our own selves. Is there karma in me or is there prem in me when I'm doing this? Is there karma in me or is there prem in me when I'm thinking like this? So we are only too familiar. We are all familiar that there is a frustration when we don't get something. But we sometimes are not familiar with the frustration that happens to us even when we have got what we wanted. And that is truly true mainly of Rajasic desires. In Savitri, Sri Aurobindo says, I'll quote, "The furies which attend fulfilled desire." Have I made myself clear? That when we don't get something, there is a fury. This we understand. But did you know about the fury that happens when a desire is fulfilled? There's this beautiful story, and I've said it earlier. Byron, Lord Byron, you know, that poet. So he pursued a woman for so long, and she would not answer his adoration. And after a long period of trying to convince her of his love and adoring her and singing to her, finally she agreed to marry him. They got married. And from the church, when they were sitting in the carriage, going to Byron's home, you know what Byron said? He says, now that I have married you, I have lost all interest in you. So this is the fury of fulfilled desire. जैसे ही हमारी कोई desire fulfill होती है, instantly, that desire doesn't give us any more joy. That fulfilled desire doesn't give us any more joy. वो joy तभी तक joy लगता है जब तक वो नहीं मिला, और चाहिए और चाहिए, और जब वो मिल जाता है तो you know, this was what I deserved, and then we are ready with the next desire. This is the problem of human mind. And when we become conscious, we have to become conscious in every thought. We have to become conscious of every vital movement of our prana. That is the divine love, is the divine ananda being experienced by me when I am thinking like this, or when I am desiring like this. Am I moving on that riju pantha, the ritasya pantha, or am I going towards duritani and taking the long circuitous circumambulatory path towards? So this is what I had to say for today. We have read the 2 verses and we have read the footnotes. I was not expecting to do more than this today. From tomorrow we will start doing the reading of the commentary by Sri Aurobindo. So I hope it was clear to everybody.
It's beautiful.
It was beautiful, Anjali. It was just amazing. Yeah. Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you. Really good.
Thank you.
Except
So
that now you have to also study a lot to explain the concepts.
It's good for me. It's good for me because, you know, the uselessness of life sometimes just comes into me, and then I feel really, really down. And that's what happened to me even yesterday. I said, क्या यार इतनी useless life lead कर रही हूँ. तो अच्छा है अब आपने कुछ और होमवर्क दे दिया है. Useless feel करने का टाइम ही नहीं होगा. But,
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Anjali. It was amazing.
Thank you,
So
Anjali.
tomorrow do you want to prepone it to 3?
Yeah.
Don't mind at 3.
Anjali, is there any book that we would be referring it to tomorrow?
Yeah, the same
This
book.
only.
Yeah, we'll
This-
be reading.
okay.
I'll tell you which page we'll be reading from.
Okay.
We'll be reading from page 74, Action and the Divine Will. Right? Page 74. We'll read from there.
Purnamadaha
Purnamidam
Purnam
Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om
Shanti
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 Hari
Hari Om